Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Shubham and I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine. And today I'm gonna talk about a very important type of anemia, that is the glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase anemia. All of you must have heard about that. Very important topic in the pathology. G6PD deficiency anemia in short, right? So if you talk about G6PD deficiency anemia, like what do I mean by that? Okay, let's try to elaborate this topic today. So G6PD deficiency anemia, basically this is a X-linked genetic disorder first of all. So let me talk about few things over here, okay, and then we'll really know about this particular G6PD deficiency anemia, what is it, right? So this is basically a X-linked recessive inheritance disorder, okay. Sometimes they can ask you from the biochemistry point of view that what is the inheritance over here in as far as G6PD deficiency is concerned. That is the X-linked recessive, guys, okay. Second thing over here, as you know, that this is coming in the category of hemolytic anemia, and that means it is coming in the category of normocytic anemia, right? So it is the normocytic normochromic anemia coming in the category of hemolytic anemia. So it is one of the type of the hemolytic anemia, guys, okay. Second thing I would like to highlight over here, that it is more common, comparatively it is more common in the males as compared to females. So I'm writing it is comparatively more common as compared to females. It is more common in the males usually, okay. Now let me talk about, and one more thing, this is the most common enzyme disorder. This is the most common, as you know, that G6PD enzyme, you must have heard about this in the biochemistry as well, guys, in the hexose monophosphate pathway, okay. Yeah, so we'll talk about that. So most common enzyme deficiency, most common enzyme disorder, I would say this is the most common enzyme disorder happening in the erythrocyte. So it is the most common enzyme disorder of your RBCs, isn't it? Most common enzyme disorder, I would say, of your RBCs, okay. That is the G6PD deficiency anemia, unique one, okay. Now let me talk about the pathogenesis. Here I have inserted one case over here, guys, for you, so that we can know that whether we have understood this topic or not. We'll talk about this case later on, but first let me talk about the pathogenesis, guys, okay. So let me talk about the pathogenesis and let's see that what is basically happening inside this particular G6PD deficiency anemia, why we are calling this particular anemia, what can be the problems we can encounter in this particular anemia if this patient is having, in some patient is having this particular kind of anemia, okay, and why is it important to diagnose this particular anemia, right? Okay, so if you talk about the pathogenesis, we need to go back to our biochemistry, guys. As the name suggests, G6PD deficiency means we are gonna lacking the G6PD enzyme in our patient, and that's why this anemia persists. So if you talk about the G6PD enzyme, guys, you will see that I'm gonna talk about the hexose monophosphate pathway, right? We have heard about this in the biochemistry, right? So hexose monophosphate pathway is a very important pathway in the biochemistry. So what happens over here is that, you know, I will just insert a pic over here so that you can really correlate what I am talking about the hexose monophosphate pathway, guys. So look at this picture over here, as you can see on your screen right now. What you can see over here, okay, what you can see over here is that, yes, so hexose monophosphate pathway, HMP, right? So glucose is converting into glucose 6-phosphate. Now glucose 6-phosphate is converting into what? 6-phosphogluconate with the help of very important enzyme, guys. And what is that? That is your G6PD, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. Now what is happening over here, basically what you need to understand is that here there is a conversion of glucose 6-phosphate into the 6-phosphogluconate, okay, with the help of what? G6PD. And NAD plus over here, important thing, NAD plus is converting into what? NADPH. Now this NADPH is nicotinamide dinucleotide phosphate, okay. You must have heard about this in the biochemistry also. So this is the nicotinamide dinucleotide phosphate, NADPH. Now this pathway generating this particular NADPH. Now this is very important for protection of the RBC against any kind of oxidative stress. I will tell about that what are the oxidative stressors basically, but if any oxidative stressors will come, then this NADPH will be the protective, will actually be there for the RBC as a protective mechanism over there. if somehow due to any kind of reason, if G6PD deficiency is happening in some patient, then this obviously this glucose 6 phosphate will not be converted into 6 phosphogluconate, and this NADPH NAD plus will not be able to convert into this NADPH, which means this protective mechanism will be hampered over here. I can say that, right? So NADPH will not be there for your RBCs to protect against the oxidative stressors. Okay, we'll talk about shortly what are the oxidative stressors I'm talking about. Okay, and that's how basically it interferes with the older RBCs, because older RBCs needs this protective mechanism really. But if this protective mechanism NADPH is not present over there due to G6PD deficiency, then obviously this problem might persist for them, and that's how the hemolysis happens, and that's how we are calling this as hemolytic anemia. So G6PD deficiency is one of the hemolytic anemia. Understood, guys? So that is the problem over here. Further 6-phosphogluconate will be not be there, then again NADPH will be NAD plus will not be able to convert further also NADPH, further also NADPH will be reducing drastically, and then this is the basic problem in the hexose monophosphate pathway which is occurring in the G6PD deficiency. And one more thing, guys, here we are having the free radicals also. Okay, what is that? Free radical I'm talking about, and those free radicals, okay, I'm gonna talk about over here. For example, in this glucose 6 phosphate which is converting into 6 phosphogluconate, here we are having what? Free radical H2O2. It is converting into the water actually with the help in this step. So free radicals are getting consumed, right? If G6PD deficiency is persisting, then free radical will not be able to convert into water, okay, will not be able to neutralize. So again, guys, free radical accumulation will start happening over here as well. So due to this free radical accumulation in the RBC, that can cause the oxidative stress of our RBC, and that's how the hemolysis might happen. So two things are happening over here. One thing is that one thing over here is that accumulation of free radical is happening, and another thing that this protective mechanism is depleting in our hexose monophosphate pathways for our RBCs. That's how the older RBCs are exposed and they are undergoing the hemolysis process. I hope everything is clear in the pathogenesis part, guys, right? So that is the basic problem which is happening in this particular in this particular mechanism in the HMP. Okay, now the thing is we need to know what are these oxidative stressors if I'm talking about. Okay, so G6PD deficiency, as I told you guys, this is the X-linked recessive, and so it is impairing what? NADPH production basically, and that's why increased susceptibility to free radical and peroxide damage. So most severe in the older RBCs, guys, basically, and their Heinz bodies production is there. I will tell you what are these Heinz bodies, and precipitating factor, these are the oxidative stressors. So what kind of oxidative stressors I'm gonna talk about over here now? So oxidative stressors can be your any kind of infection can be there. If any kind of infection, that can lead to this particularly hemolysis in the older RBCs because protective mechanism is not there. Fava beans, ingestion of fava beans can lead to favanism, okay, and that can lead to particular oxidative, these are the oxidative stressors, so that can lead to oxidative stress, and that further can cause hemolysis in our RBCs. Certain medications can also cause that. Very important, guys, sulfamethoxazole, these are the sulfa drugs I'm talking about. Primaquine also, so that is your anti-malarial, so that can also cause this particular that can also cause this particular hemolysis. These are the oxidative stressors, and that can really cause the problem for the older RBCs in these particular patients. Okay, guys, so I hope I am clear till now. Everything is clear about the pathogenesis and all, right? So that is basically thing which is happening over here. Okay, so once again, guys, due to the depletion of the NADPH, okay, and accumulation of free radicals, these are oxidative stressors will be actually will be taking this opportunity and will cause the oxidative stress of the older RBCs mainly, and that's how the hemolysis will start happening. Okay, intermittent episodes of hemolysis can be seen in these patients. Fine. Now, due to oxidative damage, as we are talking about that, due to oxidative damage, what might happen if once this NADPH is depleted and this particular free radicals are accumulating? Two things might happen over here which I can think of due to all these oxidative damage. Okay, what are these two things, guys? One thing is that these RBCs might undergo destruction. These RBCs might undergo destruction, okay, in the blood vessels only, and that will be considered as intravascular hemolysis, guys. Okay, that will be considered as intravascular hemolysis. Second thing which I can think of, that due to this accumulation of free radicals, hemoglobin will be undergoing denaturation. So denaturation of hemoglobin will be happening. If the denaturation of hemoglobin will be happening, then what will happen? These will cause the precipitates, these will cause the accumulation of precipitates of the hemoglobin. So deoxygenated precipitates of hemoglobin will be accumulating over here. And okay, and these deoxygenated precipitates of hemoglobin, these are called as your Heinz bodies, guys. These are called as your Heinz bodies. I will show you in a few moments what are these Heinz bodies, how they look actually. And whenever these Heinz bodies, they will be passing through spleen, whenever spleen is your graveyard of RBC. So whenever these these particular RBCs which are having these Heinz bodies inside them, I will show you in few seconds, they will pass through spleen and they will be captured. As they will pass through spleen, they will be captured by the splenic macrophages. Okay, so they will be captured by splenic macrophages in the spleen. Okay, captured by what? Splenic macrophages. Okay, splenic macrophages. And if they are captured by these splenic macrophages, what might happen, guys? Again, what might happen? They will take a bite from these RBCs. They will take a bite on these RBCs, and that's how we are calling this condition as bite cells. These RBCs will be called as bite cells because as they look like somebody took a bite over there, splenic macrophages took a bite. I will show you the pic as well. And that's how, because this hemolysis is happening in the spleen, that's why we will say that is extravascular hemolysis, because this is not happening in the RBC, this is not happening in the blood vessel. If the hemolysis is happening in the blood vessel, for example over here, here we were calling that as intravascular hemolysis, but it is happening in the spleen, not in the blood vessel actually. So that's why we are calling that as extravascular hemolysis. That's why we are calling that as extravascular hemolysis. So guys, over here extravascular hemolysis can be seen, right? So intravascular hemolysis can also be seen, extravascular hemolysis can also be seen at the same time. So you need to be careful over here. Okay, so GC-SPIDY deficiency I am talking about right now. Fine, guys. So that is the basic thing over here which you need to remember, that extravascular intravascular hemolysis might happen. Now let's see that how these Heinz bodies looks, how these bite cells looks. So look over here very carefully. These you can see the Heinz bodies over here right now on your screen. So these are the Heinz bodies which you can see over here. Okay, so how the Heinz bodies looks, these are the Heinz bodies as you can see over here. So these are the precipitates of hemoglobin which is actually accumulating inside the RBCs. Okay, so this one I am talking about over here, this one I am talking about over here, right? As you can see, as you can appreciate. Okay, this one. So these are your Heinz bodies. Look over here, these are your Heinz bodies, right? So it will be a sign for the splenic macrophage that this RBC is having some kind of problem. So I should not allow this into the peripheral circulation and I will capture this RBC. But somehow, so that's why they take a bite over here. Okay, somehow they are able to pass that particular spleen over there, but the splenic macrophages will take a bite. After taking a bite for these Heinz bodies, okay, then we are actually seeing the bite cells. So let's look at the bite cells as well. So look over this picture over here, as you can see, as it is looking like as somebody took a bite over them. Okay, so these are called as your bite cells. Okay, so as it is looking like somebody took a bite over here. So look over this picture over here. Okay, look at this particular cell RBC. Okay, look at this particular RBC over here, as it is looking like as somebody took a bite. Okay, so these are the black arrows, yellow arrows I am showing, that these are the particular bite cells. Okay, so Heinz bodies are there and splenic macrophages will try to capture them and they will take a bite over them. So these are called as your bite cells. Okay guys, so that is very important to know for us, right? So that is the basic thing which you need to understand. So very important, Heinz bodies are seen in where? GC-SPIDY deficiency. Bite cells will seen in where? GC-SPIDY deficiency. So I hope you will not forget that. Now let me come to the clinical features now guys. Clinical features of these patient. Okay, as you know that hemolysis is happening on a larger scale. Intravascular hemolysis is happening, extravascular hemolysis is happening. So that's how you can think of that pallor might be there due to decreased hemoglobin due to oxidative stress. Then jaundice might appear. If the jaundice I am saying, then look at the conjunctiva of this patient and you will see the icterus over there, jaundice might persist. Okay, and then you will see that this kind of patient, if the jaundice is there, if the hemoglobin is undergoing the destruction, can I say unconjugated bilirubin level will be increasing over here, which is the indirect bilirubin, this will be increased over here. Yes, because hemolysis is happening. So hemolytic anemia, it will lead to unconjugated bilirubin increase, right? So in your clinical based scenarios, in your questions, you can see these kind of terms in your particular questions, okay, in the cases, right? And because hemoglobin is undergoing destruction, can I say hemoglobin might appear in the urine as well? So hemoglobinuria might happen, okay. Due to that, hemoglobinuria might also happen. With that, fatigue might be there, dark urine might be there because of hemoglobinuria, that will lead to the dark urine, discoloration of the urine, so that will lead to the dark urine. Okay, back pain might be there in some patients due to large scale of hemolysis. Back pain might also be there. Jaundice, I told you, that can be there particularly. Okay, during the investigations part, guys, okay, if you talk about the investigations part, okay, what I can see in the investigations are also very important. So what will we see in the peripheral smear? If you will see in the peripheral blood smear, what I will be seeing over there, I will see the bite cells, isn't it? I told you that bite cells are there. So bite cells are also called as your degmacytes, okay. So do not confuse yourself, these are all they are also called as, they may also be called as degmacytes, okay. And on vital stain, if you will be seeing on vital stain, then you can see, I told you one more cells over there, these are your bodies, these are your Heinz bodies, guys. So I told you about that as well, that Heinz bodies, how they look. So two very easy findings you can see in these particular things, okay. Now Heinz bodies, I told you how they are looking. Bite cells, I told you in the peripheral blood smear how they will be looking, okay. With that, what you might see, okay, with that in the labs, actually indirect bilirubin, I told you unconjugated bilirubin, that will be increasing, okay. Haptoglobin might be decreased, okay. Haptoglobin, so unconjugated bilirubin might be increased. With that, haptoglobin over here in this patient, that will be decreasing, and LDH level also it will be increasing. As the unconjugated bilirubin increasing, LDH level will, lactate dehydrogenase level will also be increasing in this kind of patient, okay. What kind of test you can do over here? So very important, guys, I am writing over here that the test, screening test, I will say the screening test for this patient will be, one is the screening test and one is the sensitive test. One is the screening test and one is the most sensitive test. Two tests we should know over here as far as G6PD deficiency is concerned, okay, for our clinical scenarios. So for the screening test over here, I will be doing the G6PD assays, G6PD enzyme assays, okay. I will check the G6PD enzyme assays, okay, so that we can know that directly if the G6PD deficiency is there or not, and due to that maybe HMP is hampered over there, right. And the most sensitive test over here will be the fluorescent spot test, okay, fluorescent spot test, okay. So these are the most screening, so this is the screening test and the most sensitive test respectively, okay. So that is the basic thing over here. Now at last, let me come to the treatment part also. So let's treat this patient as well. So how will you manage this patient? Management is very simple, guys. Etiological treatment will be taken up over here. For example, the basic problem was about the oxidative stressors. So try to minimize these oxidative stressors. For example, the sulfur drugs over there, any kind of infection, any kind of, if the patient is taking fava beans, okay, these kind of oxidative stressors should not be tackling the patient, okay. So you should avoid these oxidative stressors, okay. So in some of the patient, this is self-limiting disease, this can heal on its own, but basically you need to avoid the oxidative stressors, okay. Avoid the oxidative stressors in these patient, okay. Along with that, what we can do, guys, along with that, in some severe patient, blood transfusion might be needed, okay. So in some patient, blood transfusion might be needed as well. So That is the basic thing. Okay, blood transfusion might be needed as well, as it is hemolytic anemia. If it is more severe, then blood transfusion might be needed. If the RBCs are very much low, if the hemoglobin is lower than 6, then in those cases we can go for the blood transfusion as well in some of the severe cases. Okay, so hemolysis might undergo the recurrence, that can be the complication over there. So if you talk about the complication, then here recurrence of the hemolysis complication, then recurrence of the acute hemolysis, that can be the problem over there. So recurrence of hemolysis, that can be the problem in these kind of patient. Okay, so along with this knowledge, let's go back to our MCQ now, and let's try to handle this MCQ, handle this case. So a 32-year-old man was there, 32-year-old Greek man presents with a rash consistent with dermatitis herpetiformis. Okay, this is a dermatological problem, you must have tackled this in the medicine also, and is treated with a course of oral dapsone. Dapsone is a sulfonamide drug, guys. Dapsone is a sulfa drug. This is the bacteriostatic sulfa drug, and I told you sulfa drug is your, yes, very good, sulfa drug is your oxidative stressor. Now over the following several days he becomes increasingly fatigued, okay, fatigue guys, and experiences persistent back pain. Okay, fatigue is there, persistent back pain is there. CBC revealed that there is a normocytic anemia. Urinalysis reveals there is a hemoglobinuria, and results from a PBS, peripheral blood smear, is shown in the figure. Which of the following is the most likely responsible for this patient's symptoms? So guys, dermatitis herpetiformis was the case. This patient was suffering from that. For that, doctor prescribed him oral dapsone. This is the sulfa drug, basically oxidative stressor for our patient. Increasingly fatigue was there, persistent back pain is there, might be due to hemolysis, and hemoglobinuria again might be due to hemolysis. Normocytic anemia, it might be GCPD deficiency anemia, as you can see over here. The stressor is also present. They told you to see the image, peripheral blood smear. So here what can I see over here, guys? Look at these bodies, Heinz bodies. Can I say these are Heinz bodies, guys? Yes. So I can see these are your Heinz bodies. Okay, Heinz bodies are there, and what you can see, can you see this cell? Can you identify this cell? Yes, this is your Bite cell. Bite cell Heinz bodies are seen in the peripheral blood smear of what particular anemia? That is your glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase anemia. So answer is very, very simple, guys, no problem with that. So first option will be the answer over here, that is the glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. Okay, I hope you are very, very much clear about this topic. Thank you for joining in, and please keep revising, and please consider subscribing my channel. If you like this video, please share with your friends, and thank you so much for joining in. I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye bye.